You're good.
Alright, so today we're going to go over the big 8 movements, and these are ones that you should without a doubt practice no matter what your goals are, because they are functional movements and they translate into every sport, every daily activity that you do in some way, and they cover every muscle in the body in a way that moves your skeleton in its natural range of motion. So let's start off with the squat, which to me is probably the single most important, if not sprints, but we'll get there. The squat is, it's a basic movement. You're moving from, it shouldn't just be a lower body exercise. It is also an upper body exercise if you add resistance to it. But if you look at babies and toddlers walking around that pick up anything off the ground, they have perfect squat form, all of them. We're born with the natural ability to squat perfectly. And the only reason you can't, if you're older and you've been sitting in chairs all your life, is because sitting in chairs have tightened you up, like I've explained in the low back pain video. Your hip flexors are just getting tight. But the squat, it's a great cardio workout for starters, because it's working the largest muscle groups in your body, which is your legs and your gluteus maximus. So anytime you want to burn fat, you should think leg exercises. It translates to a vertical jump. If you split it up into one leg at a time, you've got lunges, you've got sprinting and running like that. And so, do you have anything to add to squats? I think
it's just a fundamental exercise. All people should be able to do it. It's a basic human movement that you learn at birth and then dissipates throughout your life. It's something that everybody needs to do. You don't necessarily have to do it loaded, but you need to do it. It prevents hip disease, it prevents knee disease. All these third world countries where people still squat to poop, they don't have any of these hip diseases that we have in the US. So it is like a fundamental movement that you have to do.
And let's break down the different types of squats too for those out there, making sure they do all of them. So we've got the regular back squat that you know of. We've got the low bar and the high bar back squat. There's the front squat, the goblet squat, got just the body weight squat. And then you can even say a vertical jump is, if you're riding a workout and you want to include squats in your workout, you can do a box jump or depth jumps or even horizontal length, like jumping for distance. So there's a lot of different ways out there. You should just Google different types of squats, or we'll write in our own articles just different ways, our favorites, our least favorites, things like that. So let's do push-ups.
So yeah, the second major exercise that we want to talk about is push-ups, and we kind of discussed what our favorite horizontal pressing exercise is, and we talked about bench press and floor press and things like that, and we finally settled on the push-up because the push-up is, first off, very easy to do. You can do it at home. Anybody can do a push-up. It's very progressive, so we can modify the push-up so anybody, no matter how long you've trained or how long you haven't trained, you can do the push-up. The reason I like the push-up over the bench press is because the push-up is actually a closed chain exercise. So you have your feet and your arms are in contact with the ground, and the thing that is moving is your body. So your axial skeleton is moving in comparison to the pressure, which is on the floor, compared to a bench press, which is an open chain exercise where you're moving the weight and your axial skeleton is stable. Closed chain exercises are typically safer and they're more effective because they take a lot more core recruitment. There's a way to use your core in a bench press, but most people don't do it. When you do a push-up properly, you have to use your core like that. It trains the shoulders, it trains the abs. If you do them right, it trains the glutes, it trains the chest very well, it trains the triceps. So the push-up is just like the most fundamental upper body exercise as far as horizontal pressing, and there's tons of variations to do it. There, you can get all over YouTube and see all kind of different ways to do push-ups. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so just like you're saying, there are more ways to do push-ups than there are bench press, because bench, all you can really do is change your grip width on a horizontal line where you hold the bar. Push-ups, you can stagger your hands, you can do clapping push-ups, plyometrics, things like that. Turn it into a burpee, get up all the way onto your feet. And another thing about why it's safer is that with the bench press, you lock your scapula down on the bench and your rotator cuff is just stuck in position. Whereas the push-up gives you free range of motion, and it allows your scapula and your shoulder blades to move freely like they should with any pressing. And again, it works the entire body, whereas if you lay on a bench on your back, you're shutting everything off except for your arms and your chest, because you think it's a chest exercise. So yeah, the push-up is definitely better for training the entire body at once. I hate that flag. it trains the entire body at once, and it teaches you to use. I mean, you should train yourself to have your core tight anytime you push anything forward. So it's a safer way, and it keeps your neuromuscular system, your mind-body connection in tune with that horizontal pressing movement. And so the deadlift, that's the third one on the list. The deadlift, to me, if there was any workout that I think could cure the 80 to 90% of Americans who have low back pain, all the stuff that I cover with chiropractic care, is the deadlift. And the reason why is because it targets the glutes, which is the most important source of power in your body. And the glutes get shut off when you're sitting in chairs all day, and it tightens up that psoas muscle in the front of your hips and keeps you folded forward. So the deadlift trains you to fully extend the hips. It translates into picking things up off the ground properly. Anytime there's a heavy weight, you know how to pick it up. I mean, you'll have a strong core, everything from head to toe will be sound. You want to go over the two different ways for the deadlift?
Yeah. So you can either use a conventional stance, which is where your feet are staggered together, about right under your hips, or you can spread the feet out into a wider stance that brings your hips closer to the bar. There's different reasons for doing those, different flexibilities. More people can pull weight in a sumo fashion than they can a conventional style. Personally, I like the conventional style because I think it trains the posterior chain better than the sumo style. A lot of people that do a sumo deadlift tend to use their quads too much, and if you want to focus on those posterior chain exercises, which you should be, then the deadlift and the conventional stance is one of the best exercises to do that. Moving on to posterior chain exercises is the pull-up. I think humans are fundamentally posterior chain animals. We have all these tiny muscles in the front of our body and all these huge muscles in the back of our body. So doing deadlifts and pull-ups are obvious to me that they should be trained the most. The pull-up is probably the best way to train latissimus, which is these huge wing muscles on the back of your body. A lot of people tend to do these inverted type of row things, but if you do a true vertical pulling pull-up, you can't find a better exercise to train your grip strength, your biceps, your latissimus, even some of the muscles in the rotator cuff, rear delts, even erector spinae. You have to have your core tight too to do a good pull-up. You have to have your glutes tight to do a good pull-up. It's another total body exercise that focuses on keeping your posture right and building up posterior chain strength.
I think even with a pull-up, if you learn to do it properly, like we've shown in other videos, you do keep your core tight and your feet are slightly in front of you. You kind of got this like open bowl shape going on, and that teaches you to posteriorly tilt the pelvis, which is again helping with the low back pain issue that I love talking about, and it helps to reverse all of the other training programs that typically will train the body to anteriorly tilt the pelvis. And so it's one of the few that you can actually tilt back and kind of neutralize that position so that you're not causing back pain. And then let's move on to dips. So the dip is also a great chest exercise. Most people, you think chest, you think bench press, and it's your go-to, bench press, push-ups. But your chest actually works in more plane than just horizontal movement. So you're pulling, with a dip, you're pulling your humerus toward the midline, which is still activating the chest, the pec, but you're also using the straightest muscles underneath, and even some of the lat gets recruited a little bit. And it's just a fundamental movement. Anytime you've got to pick yourself up and onto a ledge, or maybe you're rock climbing, or you're climbing a tree. I know most of us don't do that daily now, but we were designed to do it. So anytime you've got to lift yourself up and push down, the dip is a fundamental movement for that, and it also helps with a lot of shoulder movement, and it kind of presses you through that movement to make sure that you have a full range of motion in the shoulder capsule.
And also with the dip, TJ talked about that adduction, bringing the humerus toward the body, toward the midline, and getting that squeeze. Well, most bodybuilders even talk about focusing on getting the squeeze at the top of a fly or the top of a bench press. Well, the dip is a movement that already naturally does that. You are already setting the plane of motion to get that natural squeeze. So it's one of the perfect exercises to train your chest and to train the triceps. One of the best exercises for the shoulders and for total body strength is the overhead press. I think the overhead press is widely underused because people are afraid of getting hurt, they're afraid of hurting their spine, they're afraid of hurting their shoulders, but standing up and doing an overhead press, pressing weight over your head is one of the best ways to load the axial skeleton and to train the shoulders. People that have very strong shoulders are already strong in the bench press, they're strong in the pull-ups, and they're strong in any type of horizontal pressing, any type of vertical pressing. The overhead press, like I said, loads the axial skeleton, similar in the way that a squat does, because the weight is directly over your spine, and by loading the axial skeleton, you increase the hormone response that you get, rather than doing lateral raises or something like that. That's safer to train the shoulders. Now, the overhead press is associated with a lot of different injuries, but that's because people just do them flat out wrong. So if you watch our videos on how to do the overhead press, you will be able to see the results that this exercise can give.
And I'm one of those people who, I had baseball shoulders for so long that I always avoided the overhead press, and so when I started introducing it, I realized I just couldn't do it right, and I didn't have that shoulder range of motion. So it was an easy test to know that I should work on my flexibility and keep stretching my shoulders out, making sure I can move them the full plane like they naturally should. Sprints, this is going to be my favorite topic. I think it's the #1 movement that everybody should be doing, and you know why. I mean, it's running. You require no weight. All you need is a little bit of open space. Every single sport seems like there's some form of sprinting, like soccer, basketball, baseball. Every sport there's sprinting, and if you lose the ability to sprint, you've really lost the ability to move as a human. And if people always come up and ask me, like, well, what do you do to burn fat when you want to get in that, you're doing cardio, you're getting ready for summer, you want that beach body back. I tell them sprints is the only thing you should be doing. You can go lift heavy weights, you'll get that explosiveness, that adrenaline rush that burns fat really well. But sprints not only do that, but you're working every muscle from head to toe. And some of those fine motor muscles that people kind of ignore, like nobody cares really about calves. I mean, at least I don't do a lot of calf raises, but sprints are my calf workout. It's basically the only calf workout that I really think target them the best. Going up the body, I mean, obviously you know why it's a leg workout. You're pressing with every step you take, and you're using the glutes to fully hip extend. So again, it's opening up the psoas, which is an issue with almost everybody. You're using the core to stabilize your spine, so with your breathing, you're really tightening your core. Go out and try your first sprint workout, run a few 40s, the next day your abs will be tight and they'll be sore. And so you also use your chest and your lats, so you're moving your shoulders back and forth so forcefully that both sides of your upper torso will also be sore from this. And another thing that people ignore is the neck muscles to stabilize the cervical vertebrae. And if you think about everything that runs through the neck, all the veins and arteries and the nerves, it's one of the most important muscle groups that you should really think about as far as long-term health and injury prevention. And the neck muscles and the trap, everything in the area, they'll really tighten up from sprints, and you'll be really amazed. Do you have anything to say on sprints?
Yeah, on top of that, just like what he said, some of the fine motor muscles that you don't really think about, like the muscles in the neck, or one of the big ones is if you sprint, go out on the grass and sprint barefoot for a little bit, and you'll notice the muscles in your feet are really weak from wearing soft shoes all the time or wearing supportive shoes all the time. And if you know how the body works, how the kinetic chain works, if you start to have a weakness somewhere in your foot, then that'll lead up to pain in the knee or pain in the hip, and you'll start to compensate one way or the other. So sprints are one of the best ways to train those fine motor muscles in the neck and in the feet. And it's also just the only exercise that I've really seen anybody just give their all-out effort in and really be tired after one rep. Like, you can do one sprint, 100-yard sprint, and that is almost a pretty good workout if you really, really try at it. But do three or four of them, get done in like 10 minutes, and you've had a pretty good workout that day.
Yeah, so if you're in a time crunch and you want to burn some fat, you only need a few sprints. I mean, you can do 40s, you can do 10-yard sprints, or you can do a couple hundreds and get it over with really quickly. And another thing I was going to add is that we wrote sprints, not jogging. And as much as jogging can be good for you, it's good for the joints, a lot of people do it wrong. And I think a lot of the issues, one of the main issues is heel striking, which causes that vibration all the way up your skeleton. It can start vibrating with the spine, cause back problems in that way. You'll get knee issues, hip pain. And so the faster you go, you'll realize that you'll be more on your toes. So when we're walking from our heel of our foot and we roll up to the toe. If you start jogging, you might start landing in the middle of the foot, but if you're in an all-out sprint, you're on your toes like you should be. So you're recruiting those calf muscles in the bottom of the foot, that plantar fascia, keeping it strong and tight. And so it is something that I would not recommend to somebody who's not in decently good shape to start out sprinting, but I would definitely focus on getting yourself to that. And don't just stop with slow jogging. Try to increase the speed and the intensity and lower the amount of time you actually spend running.
So the last exercise we wanted to talk about was rows. We think barbell rows or inverted rows, any way that you want to do some type of row is the best way to do some type of vertical pulling. You can get away with doing mainly horizontal pulling, but you will end up with weaknesses somewhere, either when you're doing horizontal pressing or some types of dips or overhead press. If you haven't been doing rows and haven't been working some of those muscles in the horizontal pulling, like some of the muscles in the rotator cuff or the rhomboids, some of the things that pull your scapula down and tight, vertical rows or horizontal rows are just the best way to train that. You could load them heavy with an actual bent over barbell row, or some of you guys like to do T-bar rows, or you can grab some TRX straps or a barbell and a power rack and do just an inverted body weight row. Even if you're too strong for that, even if you can do 30 pull-ups, getting down and doing an inverted row with body weight will train your grip a lot better than you think it would.
Mm-hmm. And another thing I noticed is that a lot of people like to have that really nice front of the body. They like guys like to have a nice square chest and the abs, and so they do a lot of focus on the front of their body, and they don't care much for the back. And what happens is they get stronger in the front and not so strong in the back, and so you'll see that rounded shoulder. People are walking around like gorillas with their knuckles lined forward instead of to the sides like they should be. And so the row is a good way to reverse that. And it's something they teach in school for biomechanics and just functional fitness, is that you should be able to, you should hold your ears right above your shoulders, and they should be rounded forward. You'll have that rounded low back and upper back. And if you do 2 days of rowing for every day of bench press, that's what they recommend to make sure that your shoulders are still in that centrated position. So that's another good thing, is that it's a therapeutic exercise for anyone with that rounded upper back, is that it helps you to open up that chest more and keep the shoulders back where they belong. Well,
That's it.
So that's it. Big 8. Go out and do them.